Welcome everybody. We always have players and members and new umpires who are wondering about how to adjudicate the historical Kriegsspiel rules. So today we're going to take a look at the Tschischwitz rules in the 3rd edition of 1870. Hope you enjoy it. So here we go. I have set up a tactical situation just as an example, and I have brought two rule sets here. First of all, to the left you can see the supplement to the original Reiswitz rules. So Reiswitz published his rule set, the original proper Kriegsspiel rule set in 1824. 4 years later, when he had already died, the supplement was published, which a group of Kriegsspiel enthusiasts had started working on right after Reiswitz rules were published. And they tried to streamline a few aspects, but especially modified some of the values. They changed the dice, they changed the loss ratio because the effectiveness of artillery and musketry, Reiswitz assumed, was way too high even for the shooting range, let alone, or let aside, a tactical combat situation. So they tried to fix that. What you see here is quite confusing, I guess. Those are the faces of 7 dice. So on the right hand side here you see 6 sides of the small arms fired dice. Those would be cut out and glued onto wooden dice. If we take a closer look here, we can see a range indication of paces, 100 to 500 paces. It indicates that this is the infantry firing die, and it differentiates between a free fields of fire and, well, obscured fields of fire, let's call it that way. So that means obscured is if there are bushes or trees in the way, if the enemy is behind a wall, or if there is interceding terrain, rolling terrain, whatever that might be. The enemy might also be just on a higher elevated position, right? Because back in the day, the infantry had a hard time understanding that gravity would make the musket balls drop at the feet of the enemy when they were shooting up the hill. So they didn't quite understand most of the time that they had to aim higher when shooting uphill. So, and then in those two categories, there are 3 more types of infantry identified. It's 1/2 battalion in line. It's tirailleurs, which basically is skirmishers, and then that is 2 pieces of tirailleurs, and then 2 pieces of Jäger infantry, right? So as you can see, the Jäger usually have a little bit of a higher effective range here because they are using rifles and not muskets, and the skirmishers have a little less effect than the massed musketry fire. But there would be basically 1 company of skirmishers covering the width of a battalion, whereas half of a battalion does, in this case, 15 points of damage at a range of 100 paces or less. Right? And then we have these dice here, which would be differently colored to differentiate the type of dice. So we can see here that these 6 squares indicate die number 1, these die number 2, die number 3, 4, 5, and 6. These different dice were used based on, and those are here used, the number of these dice is relevant to close combat situations and morale decisions and morale impact, which morale might be come into play as a result of melee, as a result of being under fire for some amount of time, as a result of taking losses, as a result of being surprised, whatever the umpire might come up with. So based on a ratio of strength or based on the assessment of the situation, one of these dice would be picked and rolled, and depending on whether a black corner came up or not, the result would be adjudicated. On morale, that is. If we are looking at the close combat rating, we can see a letter here, G, T, and R. Which is, the R is retreat, the G is geschlagen, which means beaten, and the T is total geschlagen, which means totally beaten. These are the different stages of how badly has one of the sides been mauled in melee or by being under fire for an extended period of time. So how big is the morale effect? How far do they have to retreat away from the enemy unless there is a secondary line of reserves, which turns a beaten or completely beaten result into a retreat, which is very important in the historical rules. And also not only how far or for how many turns they have to retreat, but also determines the amount of time that unit may not defend itself for and may not advance against the enemy and attack the enemy, right? So that is important. And then these two numbers here, they indicate the losses taken in close combat. So let's say we had a situation where we had to pick die 1 because of the ratio, and how the ratio assessment works we'll take a look at in a second. But let's just assume we have to take die 1, we roll that, and then the winning side would inflict 20 points of loss on the defenders, or the losing side, if infantry and if that's cavalry, if cavalry is in close combat and melee, they would lose 6. So cavalry losses are way smaller than infantry losses, but cavalry tends to run away much quicker, right? Only a portion of the cavalry is really in melee, and then the whole squadron runs away. It's mostly very brief combats. And this is emphasized by the historical rules. They really emphasize and point out combat is very dynamic. It's units falling back, reserves being brought up, reserves catching up basically the routing units being rallied right behind the reserve line, which then is ready to move up and take their position. All right, so lots of information, and these dice, also die 1 to 6, also are used for different types of artillery. So it works basically, the upper part here works basically like the infantry firing table works. In this case, these are 6-pounders with an open field of fire, with a obscured field of fire. We have the usual round shot up here. We have a roll shot. We have canister fire down here, and yeah, on that goes. Now, during that period from 1824 going onwards, Kriegsspiel designers and players and officers who used it always found it was too difficult to adjudicate. Reading those tiny dice, well, sometimes they were really chunky wooden dice, was very difficult. There are so many intricate rules to all that, so they discarded that. And basically the rule set developed by Tschischwitz in 1864, I believe. And I have it here in the third edition, 1870. So right before the the Franco-Prussian War. And these rule sets kept being updated based on not only the streamlining attempts, but also the technological development of weapons, right? If they had more effective artillery or more effective rifles, they would release a new edition of the rules. So what he did is, well, he said, let's get rid of these custom dice and just use a regular D6 for everything we do when it comes to combat. And he has a ratio table up here, which is important for the melee especially, which then decides which die to roll down here, right? One of these. And by saying roll a die, it means roll that D6 on, let's say, if the table tells us to roll die 4, we would not pick a specific die, but just this D6 and roll it on here, and you can see how that works. We cross-reference the result, and that's what happens. And the same is true for the artillery and the musketry. We do have the 6-pounders here, we have 4-pounders here, and different types of fire at open fields of fire and then obscured fields of fire, and then the infantry down here, which you can see has a way higher effective range now that they are using rifles. Okay, so that is that. So that's the basic idea you need to get when we get started. I have set up an example here using the blocks that would be used historically. So the size of the blocks hasn't really changed since Kriegsspiel. They always use the same basically. And Kriegsspiel said all the objects, all the pieces we are using and the maps are the scale of 1 to 8,000, right? This map you can see here in the background, and that's why it's so squishy or blurry, isn't a 1 to 8,000. I think it's 1 to 20,000, somewhere about that. It's still usable, and a higher resolution version of this map would be available. This is just the freely available download, which we are allowed to use. Now, 1 to 8,000 means that 1 decimal inch, and that is a Prussian decimal inch of 1816, equals 400 paces. And the way I have scaled that in this module is that if you don't use inch but grid units to measure, then 1 grid is 100 paces, right? So 4 grids are 400 paces. Okay, understood. And that means then that 100 paces are roughly 0.94 centimeters, so 94 millimeters. And you can calculate the sizes of the blocks accordingly. What I did here, and thanks to Damon for scripting these pieces for me, is I use sections for batteries. Usually there would be 2 blocks here of 8 artillery pieces each. To track those, I'm using these because of the bookkeeping. Makes it a little bit easier, and because of the scripting. All right, anyways, we have a situation here. We have 2 Austrian battalions here, which have 3 pieces. In the historical rules, this would never happen because the historical rules expect you to use the Prussian organization for both sides, because they wanted to train their own officers, their Prussian officers. They should train with the Prussian organization, the Prussian unit sizes, the Prussian equipment. They would not take into account the historical, regional, national differences in command structure, in unit sizes, and organization, and in weapons. That's very important. We can do that though if we want to play a historical situation, then we can do that. So the Prussians, they assume one of these half battalion blocks. And for the French, I have chosen to use 2 half battalion blocks to form 1 full battalion. 1 half battalion block would represent 2 companies worth of infantry, right? But because the Habsburg forces were rather large, they used very big battalions, I've decided to portray them with 3 half battalion blocks. Okay, so for 6 companies. And if we went on through the Napoleonic Wars, we would choose to increase the size of the French battalions if they were at full strength accordingly, because at some point the French had 8 companies in a battalion. So would need 2 more blocks like that. Anyways, so we are playing with Napoleonic pieces here, but using Tschischwitz's weapons and tables for this example. Now, he brings some examples in the text, which is great. And for you to understand these loss points, I don't have a tracking system for that in place, because the scripted tracking I'm using here is I've brought that down to 12 hit points per half battalion. Tschischwitz would assume that a company of infantry, close rank infantry, would be 48 points. Same for a file of skirmishers. 60 points for a squadron of cavalry, 25 points for 1 piece of artillery, right? So keep that in mind, just for you to understand how that works. And then there would be a lot of bookkeeping involved, which isn't really that well developed in these historical rule sets. They have sheets for that where they would put pins in, but they would track that globally for each side. So let's say Team Blue tags X amount of points losses on infantry, then they would track globally infantry losses that many. And then once they reach the point of, well, a company is lost, then the umpire would say, well, this battalion over here should take the losses. They are not tracking per battalion, which is quite fascinating, I think. Anyways, we are able to do that here because of the scripting, and we can, of course, choose to track losses differently. Anyways, let's go on with, and I'm sorry that I tend to go into the details here. I hope you find that useful. Means, of course, that the video probably is longer than it should be, but I hope, let me know in the comments if that's useful. If not, I'll try to make a PowerPoint out of it, which very briefly explains step per step. Okay, so we have 2 line battalions here. The French have 1 battalion here of light infantry, which historically the rules don't take into account, which is fair because they fought as line infantry did, and then they have 2 battalions of line infantry. Now we could engage simply in musketry, right? Let's say they are at, let's say that's 400 paces to hit these guys, and let's say both can do that. They would probably be a little bit closer to each other. So we pick the die. Now we have to decide this battalion shooting up here. Let's assess the situation from these lines here. We can see that the Austrian battalion is uphill on a slope, so they are shooting down, these guys are shooting up, so that means this battalion here is shooting at the obscured fields of fire, or for bad effect as it's called in Tschischwitz rules. And we have already assessed it's 400 paces to shoot here. So now we would roll this 1d6, roll the 5. So now we go over here, infantry fire, 400 paces, 300 to 400, yes, that's true. So we need to look at this line, above this line, and then we rolled a 5. So we cross-reference, whoops, the 5 with 3 to 400, and we get 16 points of loss, and we would note that down somewhere. And then, because all combat happens simultaneously, this battalion would shoot back. Now, question is, would these two companies be able to fire down there potentially? Right? And that's a very interesting question. They probably have not quite an effective range here, because they are up to 500 paces. Those guys are closer to 400. So let's say, because these guys are far away and they are not shooting at these, in our example at least, let's say all of the whole battalion is shooting at 500 paces, right? So maybe even 500 to 600. Okay. I need to double check one thing, if it's actually counting full battalions or what. Verlust Feuer von 6 Geschützen eines Bataillons. Yes. All right. So it's counting for a full battalion here. Full battalion. That's what a complete battalion would inflict. Okay. So we roll a d6 for these guys. It's a 1, which is really, really bad. We said 500 to 600, didn't we? Well, 400 to 500. We cross-reference, and at good effect, because they are in a good position, that would be 12 points of losses. But then again, we would probably reduce that. So we would first of all increase it by 1/3. So that would be 16 losses, and then, yeah, probably say 14 or something because of the varying distance. So this is how you adjudicate infantry, so small arms fire. Now we have artillery over here. We have artillery over here. It's at full strength, so it has 16 guns in the battery. Let's assume those guys are 4-pounders, and would they be shooting with canister? Maybe so. 300 to 600 is the range for that. No. So they are at, well, 900 to 1000 paces. So they would use this fire here. We roll the die for the battery. A 2, is it for good effect? Well, they are on sort of a hill here, shooting along a major road, but terrain is rolling. There are some trees over here which might expand, so I guess that is not to good effect. So that is to bad effect. We rolled a 2. Bad effect, 2. That's 12 points of losses. Could have been much worse. Could have been much worse. And that's how you adjudicate artillery fire. Very easy, right? You only have to cross-reference these sort of things. And they are actually talking about 6 guns here because they assume smaller batteries for 1870. But anyways, doesn't really matter. You understand the system, I guess. Now let's talk about close combat. Close combat is quite interesting, and morale. So let's assume Brigadier Soult here wants to attack this battalion. They have been in a firefight here, so they are sort of distracted. Now he orders his guys to form assault columns. Let's say we have 2 battalions and assault columns here, and they are closing in on the enemy. Now, first of all, they are an easier target, of course. So small arms and artillery fire against assault columns will have a larger effect. There are rules for that. So what you want to do really is to screen them with skirmishers, as would have been historically the case, because skirmishers can absorb much more hits than the line infantry or massed infantry in assault columns can do. Now, there is a special rule though. They are not allowed to simply charge in with the bayonets and push these guys away. No, there is a special rule. And it says here we go. Infantry combat, infantry against infantry. It's paragraph 29. If infantry wants to approach against firing infantry in open terrain, flat and open terrain, so we need to roll die number 1 at 400 paces, die number 2 at 300 paces, and die number 3 at 200 paces against their approach. So if they do not pass the test, the morale test, they have to stop and deploy into line. Right? Now, how does that work? They are at 400 paces right now. We pick die number 1. So die number 1 is this die here. And it has red markings and black markings, right? So in this case, die number 1 has a 50-50 of red and black. So now we roll for this battalion here, and we check whether they may proceed or have to stop. Die number 1, and we say on red, because red is usually the disadvantaged side, wins if red is rolled, because as you can see on the other die levels here, there are many more black results than red results, right? So black would always decide against the disadvantaged or in favor of the advantaged unit. So what we want to proceed is red. And we rolled a 3 on die number 1, so they are allowed to proceed, which they will do. I leave them there for the moment though. How many paces do they have to walk? 400. Now, usually infantry would be able to move 200 paces in 2 minutes, but because they are attacking, they can move 250, so 2.5 in this case. So next step is then at 300 paces, die number 2, right? Yes, die number 2. So we roll again, looking for red results, and now it's only 2 out of 6. We rolled a 4, which is a black, which means this guy has to stop at 300 paces away from this unit. So that's there. They stop here, they deploy, which takes them 2 minutes actually, and next turn they will open fire. So the assault failed. Now we assess that for this, starting with die number 1, rolling a 4, and they stop immediately. So you can see it's very difficult to actually get into close combat. Now let's assume they were successful and they reached that position They have been fired upon by this line, of course, taking the losses while they approach, because all the resolution is simultaneously. Now, let's assume they reach that. Now we get into close combat situation, and now we have to assess the strength of both units. Let's assume that these two companies are not able to participate in this combat because they are locked in a firefight with this battalion up here. So we have one battalion against one battalion, and for the sake of the example, I will assume that they are both at full strength. So now we take a look at the ratio table, and we can see a ratio of 1 to 1 means we roll die number 1. Now, is there a special rule for them to get an additional modification? I don't think so. No, only that the enemy will, if the assault column now manages to beat them, the beaten unit is completely beaten, no matter what morale result is rolled. So let's just try. Let's say they are at a 1-to-1 strength ratio. We roll die number 1. We're looking for red results. It's a 2, so the assault column is beaten actually, and it takes 12 points of losses, and the defender, I believe, takes half, so they would be taking 6. These guys would be taking 12 points, and they are forced to fall back 250 paces. They will also be heavily disrupted for 10 turns, which gives them a -1 on the die level adjudication. And they would be, what are they actually? We rolled a 2, they only have to retreat. So that's all right. That would mean we would have to track that they are not able to defend for 2 turns if engaged in close combat, and they are not able to advance against the enemy for 4 turns. So that's 8 minutes, right? If you play real time and with 2-minute adjudication turns. So that's the example there. Would they have been successful? These guys had been completely beaten no matter what, and they had to retreat for 8 turns actually, or until reaching a favorable terrain, which there is none here, and there's no reserve either behind them, which would have to be within 300 paces, I believe, to transform the completely beaten into a retreat result. So they have to go. What this example already shows, even though it was all quite balanced, is it is super important, 1, to protect your forces with skirmishes. 2, prepare assaults and attacks in general by artillery fire and infantry fire, skirmish fire or musketry before you go in. Only attack a weakened enemy, right? Or attack them from the flank, which would shift the die ratio, right? You always start at the pure numerical strength ratio. So if we let's get rid of all these guys, and let's say they are fresh like so, and they would be fighting 1-on-1 here for whatever reason. Not even forming assault columns. So now we have a ratio of 3-to-2 or 2-to-3. And a 2-to-3 means we roll die number 2. Okay? Die number 2. In favor of red. In favor of red. So we could say, okay, let's roll die number 2 in favor of red. Is there anything else which might influence the result. Let's say the smaller unit here was disrupted. And how you get rid of disruption is staying out of combat for 10 turns and not moving rapidly and all that stuff. So basically resting out of combat for 10 turns. That would mean the advantage of red is raised by 1 die level. It's no longer about the ratio, now it's about the die level. So it said we roll die number 2 in favor of red. Now it becomes die number 4 in favor of red, so even worse for blue. So now we roll die number 4, and on a result of 3, well, for probability reasons, we have to re-roll. A blank result always means re-roll. And we roll a 6, which is the worst that could have happened for blue. It is 30 points of losses and completely beaten, right? Even though the enemy wasn't in assault columns, these guys are completely beaten. They have to fall back and continuously so, and they cannot attack for 8 turns, or well, cannot defend for 8 turns and cannot attack for 16 turns. And these guys have won. You could then decide that these guys are now disrupted and these guys are now heavily disrupted because they lost that combat, which would be another die level modification, right? If they were in close combat again. So very easy once you've understood the system. And these guys would be taking losses as well, right? They would be taking half the losses, I believe. Which I would have to look up, but I think that's the case. Or maybe even a third. Not quite sure. Now, let's assume, let's go to the book, because there are some interesting examples in there too, especially. So he says here, first example, 8 squadrons of cavalry attack a formed battalion. Surprisingly, which die should we pick? Now, 1 battalion equals 4 squadrons of cavalry in strength, right? So, based on the numerical ratio, this would be a 1:2 or 2:4. So we pick die number 3 against the battalion, so in favor of the cavalry. Cavalry, however, which attacks infantry, has to roll 4 dice worse. So what does that mean? The 8 squadrons would thus roll die number 3 against themselves, so to their disadvantage. However, the battalion has been attacked surprisingly. So it has to get 2 die level worse. It would have been even worse if they had not been formed, but they are formed up. So the cavalry rolls 2 die levels better, which results in die 1. Now, how does that work? Let's go back to the ratio and show you how to do this. So based on the ratio, it was decided it's die number 3, right? Die number 3 in favor of the cavalry, I think. So let's say this is cavalry. Okay. Now, there's this special rule, though, that because the cavalry is the advantaged side now, we are assessing the situation from their perspective. Now, cavalry attacking infantry has to roll 4 dice worse. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? We go 1, 2, 3, and 4. But now in favor of the infantry. We started in favor of the cavalry, but we have shifted the die levels 1, 2, 3, 4 down. So basically, we now roll die 3 inverted. That's what it is, what it means. Now, however, the battalion has been attacked surprisingly, so it rolls 2 dice worse. So again, we shift that 2 die better, die levels better for the, and I guess the drawing doesn't help, but we get back to die number 1 against the cavalry. Yes. And now he says, well, you might have noticed that die number 1 has the same amount of red and black results. What about that? We have to determine now whether red or black will beat the cavalry, because the cavalry is now at the disadvantage, right? And the umpire says, well, let's pick red. Why not? Doesn't really matter in this case, because the results are equally distributed anyways. Okay, so he rolls a die, and in this case, in his example, he rolls a 6. So die number 1, he rolls the 6. The cavalry is beaten, and it will lose 6 points. Is that correct? Let's see. Oh no, he said red cavalry would be beaten on red. Okay, so, but he rolled black, so the infantry is beaten, even though it was slightly advantaged. The infantry is beaten here. The result is beaten, not completely beaten, but beaten. However, because infantry got beaten by cavalry, this beaten result is transformed into a completely beaten, and the battalion will lose the 24 points indicated on top here. Always the infantry losses on top and the cavalry losses below. Had we rolled a 5 here, a red result would have come up, and the cavalry would have been beaten. So there you go. It would have lost the 15 points in this example by musketry while closing in, and 20 points. Why is that? Well, I guess, let's see, table 3. Yeah, I guess he he didn't exemplify it or goes into detail, but he says the battalion shoots with muskets, or with their rifles actually, and increases 20 points of losses on the cavalry. Would the cavalry have stayed in the infantry, that means melee close combat continued, the infantry would have lost 1/4 of its strength next turn. So it's all a little bit confusing. There are lots of things to special rules. That's, from my perspective, the main issue here is special rules, right? The system is really basic. Look at the strength ratio, pick the die, and then modify it. But there are then the special rules. Well, cavalry rolls 4 dice worse, and because the infantry was surprised, it gets 2 dice better, and back and forth, and all these elements which are taken into account. You would also, if you track the strength points per unit, per battalion, or per squadron, or whatever, you would actually have to take that into account, right? If they had less manpower and already taken losses here, then that would be taken into account when calculating the ratio, which then decides on which die level we start on, and then those die levels are, as we have learned in the example, are modified. Okay, so I guess that might still be confusing. This is how Tschischwitz works. I'm currently working on a more streamlined system of that, trying to keep the nuances, but make it much easier and quicker to assess and facilitate. So let me know if that was helpful in any way or not. Sorry for the rambling and the examples and explanations. Again, I hope you found them helpful. If not, let me know and I will try to improve or choose a different approach to explaining this. In any case, if you're new to Kriegsspiel and just came across this video on YouTube, feel free to join the community. We are a very welcoming and diverse large community on a global scale with more than 2,300 members by now from all around the globe, and we are welcoming practitioners, enthusiasts, hobbyists, whoever is interested in the history of wargaming, Kriegsspiel in particular, and wants to try it. We are running games at the tactical level like here, at the operational level, at the strategic level. We are running diplomatic games, large campaigns, political games, everything you can think of. Kriegsspiel might be usable for or exploitable for. That's what we do, and we want you to join us. So visit us on kriegsspiel.org. There you find a link to our Discord server. You're more than welcome. And we are looking forward to see you in one of our battles. Until then, have a great day.